show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. To Omaha we go, where Clinton Yates is covering the College World Series. Yates, what's up? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Gregory. I am currently watching the Florida Gators practice. They're doing a little BP right now. Also, some side sessions going on with the outfield, and it's a hot one, man. Omaha is much more, let's just say, steamy than people realize when it comes this time of year.
Uh, I'm guessing that weather will eventually make its way this way. Weather talk, that's what people came for on a Friday. It is unseasonably cold and like weird, and it feels like it's April here and it's
Really?
July in a week. Yeah, I don't
Wow.
know what the hell's going on. It's really
Yeah, that's
messing with me.
like
Uh,
90 degrees for 4 days here, and I'm sweating my off. So yeah,
good.
I'll be happy to see some cooler temps.
Thanks for editing yourself so I didn't have to bleep it later. All right. So what I mean, this is something you go to basically every year. Why do you love this tournament so much? Why do you love the College World Series so much?
I just think that the brand of baseball that NCAA provides is so much different from MLB. It's a more, let's just say, hard to predict kind of style of baseball. In the big leagues, everybody's either really good and mistakes don't happen, but the sort of mindset that goes into the psychological element of playing tournament baseball in a national spotlight, in a neutral site, it's hard to explain. If you really love the game, it's really easy to attach yourself to these teams. And Omaha in specific as a place is such an interesting locale to do it. They've obviously had it for forever. The old Rosenblatt Stadium is no longer, but here at Charles Schwab Field, it's sort of a different vibe, but Omaha as a location gets behind certain teams, and one of the teams in the national championship, LSU, is a darling of this town. And so a lot of people in the crowd rooting for the Tigers. They're of course playing Florida. Big SEC matchup. They didn't even actually play this season, which is very interesting in the overall context of the game, but it's just as close to whatever version of a kids game we think we're going to get that is farther away from Major League Baseball. And, these kids are out there fighting their behinds off to try to win a national title. And some of the stories are just fantastic. And I love it.
What's your favorite story that you've besides the Jello shots from LSU? What's your favorite story of the
Right now,
tournament?
it's easily a kid named Trey Morgan. He plays first base for the team. He bats left. He is one of the most athletic players in the country. And I would say that prefer pretty much any sport. If you want to go check out a play last night where he fielded a bunt and they got a tag down on a guy for Wake Forest and knocked out the number one team in the country, it was the play of the game, play of the tournament as far as I'm concerned. And it's still on a loop in my mind. He's a good kid. He's from New Orleans. I just got through talking to his dad for a story, and I really think he's going to be somebody you're going to see in the big leagues for at least a decade. So remember that name, Trey Morgan.
There you go. If you want to read that story, ESPN.com and Anscape once it is up. Clinton Yates joining us for his Friday visit this week, coming to us from Omaha for the Men's College World Series. However, we will spend most of our time talking NBA. I think that the draft last night, obviously there's so much that's interesting about it. But when you talk about Wembanyama, like even when LeBron came out, I feel like there were more people that were like, I don't know, this is a lot of hype. Does it feel like to you that people have just accepted that he's going to be this good, and there's not really any pushback?
It's odd to me because I don't have a problem with the kid getting hyped. I think his personality is pretty cool. Breakfast taco is always good. I
Yes.
just feel that, like, I still have frame concerns, Craig. I really honestly do. When you look at a guy like a Nikola Jokic, you look at some of the other players around the league. I'm not saying that he's Chet Holmgren. I'm not saying that he's too small to play. I'm very interested to see how his game translates to the NBA. I need to watch it. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying that he's going to be too frail, but we keep getting these different body types that move into the NBA and they adapt differently. Jokic is the guy I'm thinking of specifically. He's like a water polo player on the field, on the court. And, for example, that's different than, say, a Kevin Durant. And people say, oh, he's this plus this. I don't know that, and I really hope that because he went to an organization like the Spurs, they can develop him into something that they have a plan for, as opposed to just kind of letting it happen. And I'm very curious to see what's he going to play like? Like, where do you play this guy on the floor? How does he defend? I'm as curious as I've been about a player, and not just from a talent standpoint, but from a general mesh point standpoint. I don't know, man. I don't know about you, Craig, but like, I've never seen any player like this in terms of what he brings to a basketball court and how it works in the modern NBA. It'll be fascinating to see.
It's super fascinating. positionally, like I was having this conversation with somebody this morning. It's like, well, they were like, is he a 4 or a 5? I was like, yes. He's 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 whatever the is not filled by the other four guys on the floor,
Right.
because he can literally do everything. He can guard perimeter players. He's obviously a great shot blocker at 7'5". He can shoot, he can pass, he can dribble, he can post, he can literally do everything. His skill development at this age is similar to a Durant, if not more advanced than Durant was coming out of Texas,
Right.
which is crazy. But Clinton, I think the thing that's been most interesting to me this week with Wembanyama is listening to him talk. I
Mm.
listened to the podcast he did with JJ Redick. That was fantastic. I've heard some of his interviews, which are obviously much shorter on television and the like. And the way he approaches the exact thing you're talking about, his body, I think is pretty fascinating and could be sink or swim. So far, it's very much been swimming, because he has played a 72 game French season. And by the way, it's a more physical game in Europe, in part because they allow more contact by rule, and in part because the referees aren't as good. So there's more contact in general.
Right.
But he said, like, I'm a one of a kind athlete. I am a one of one, and thus I have to approach the way I train as one of one. And I think, as someone who lives in that training world, like, that is the correct answer. You have to get it right, but it's not like he's trying to fit into some cookie cutter that he, proverbially speaking, at 7'5", does not fit in.
Well, let me ask you about that because, okay, sure, the French league is more physical on the court, but France is a nation that's the size of, like, let's just say Nebraska. You know what I mean? The travel and the stress of the NBA
Yes.
is bigger than just the games you're playing on the 48 minutes that you're on the court. And so for me, that's what I mean. Like, how does the physicality and the entirety of being in the NBA translate to who he is from a body type standpoint? It will be very interesting to see because, listen, in days of load management, back to backs, all this other stuff, like, I feel like that's going to be such an important part of how they develop him, the Spurs, that is, which is keeping him on the court. Because, again, look, I'm not the physicality guy that you are, but when I see a 7'5" guy like that, and I'm thinking about him playing 82 games, man, that's going to be a tough go every time just based on stress on the body. And I really do think that it's going to be the main priority for the Spurs right now because, as you said, the skills are already there.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because the travel and stuff is something you just don't see in Europe. Maybe in
Right.
like the tournament finals, but even then, like, the idea of playing back to back, not a thing in Europe. And sometimes he was talking about with JJ, like, they play one game a week, and so he practiced a lot harder. Like, the idea of doing a two a day is not foreign to him. The idea of, like, hard full contact practices, but you're not doing the equivalent of that. Even if you say, okay, a hard contact practice is as physically tolling as a game, like, you're not doing it after a flight where you got in at 3 in the morning. And
No.
that is a
Right.
great point that you just don't see in the European leagues.
Never mind diet. You look at a guy like Zion. I mean, there's a lot of issues that I think the Spurs are the reason why I trust this. They're a franchise that does
Yeah.
everything well. I've always said this about the Spurs. The Spurs are like your cousins that your parents are like, you should do it like the Spurs. The Spurs did their homework. The Spurs cut the lawn. That's why the Spurs can go to that party. And you're like, enough with the Spurs already. But I do trust them more than anybody when it comes to developing a player as unique as this.
Yeah. And by the way, they invented load management back in the day when
Yes.
David Stern wanted to rip Pop's head off, because they put him on ABC on Saturday night right after they signed the big national TV deal. And he'd be like, yeah, Tim, this game's in Los Angeles. Tim's in San Antonio. You hate to see it. You just, oh, what a shame.
Right.
Clint Yates
No,
with
it's fine.
us here on the Hoffman Show, joining us from the Men's College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. We're talking a little NBA. Any other player in the draft that you are particularly intrigued by?
My man who dressed up like Dorothy from Kansas. I mean,
Oh, Grady
like,
Dick.
just on a simple presentation standpoint, I was like, yo, welcome to the league, my guy. You are a superstar. I mean, I've obviously seen him play before, but I just thought that was really fascinating. Again, to me, draft night is as much about introducing the personalities to America as it is about anything basketball related because you just don't really know. I mean, sure, a LeBron James comes by once every 20 years, a Victor comes by once every 20 years, but like, people didn't really know necessarily who Kobe Bryant was unless you were really paying attention to high school basketball. And he got traded on draft day. You know what I'm saying? It's not even like he got picked by the Lakers. So, gold, I mean, red sequin suit. Where do you even get that? Like, Who?
Dorothy's
What?
shoes. I mean, that was the thing is they were joking on the broadcast. It's like, oh, is this an homage to Dorothy because he went to Kansas? And he's like, yes, this is an homage to Dorothy because I went to Kansas.
Like, what a bit. You know what I'm saying? I love this guy already. I was thoroughly impressed with that. No matter what the suit looked like, no matter how ridiculous it was, the guy's in touch with American pop culture already. That's fantastic, dude. I feel like if I'm in Kansas or from Kansas, I'm gonna love this guy forever.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Fantastic.
You had twins. That was cool. You
Yeah,
got
that's
you,
very cool. Well, you know what's interesting about this too is this is sort of a separate discussion though, is the idea that picking guys out of college is just not necessarily going to be what we do that much longer, perhaps. I mean, you got guys coming from Europe, you got guys coming out of the G League, you got guys coming out of these side leagues. That to me was a step forward in terms of how the NBA develops its players from a talent acquisition standpoint that I thought was very interesting. Twins, cool, but you got guys from teams that most people in America have literally never heard of. And that's kind of where the draft is moving to. It's not just X guy from X conference who you saw play for 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. I mean, that is a distant thought, but the NBA has expanded not just globally, it's expanded internally in the United States of America, which is a good step for Adam Silver.
Yeah, no, for sure. Last but not least, the home team. So if I had told you, let's say like April 1st, right before the end of the regular season.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually perfect. Because if I had told you on April 1st that Tommy was going to get fired, they'd have a bunch of new executives, including one of the top guys from the Thunder and one of the top guys from the Clippers, that they were going to have Jordan Poole on their roster, that Beal, Porzingis, and likely Kuzma would all be gone. You probably would have said, funny April Fool's bit, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, Craig, I mean, look, I'm 42 years old. This team has never won 50 games in my lifetime. I watched the debacle that was Michael Jordan come through town. I got to see it before I can believe anything. I mean, you know, we can talk about, oh, well, the restructure is going to happen, the breakdown, the rebuild, the process, blah, blah, blah. I'll believe it when I see it. For one reason, and you know the reason why, and that's because of Theodore. I don't believe that he is capable of letting go of the reins. He very famously said, we will never, ever tank. Now that he's had to go back on that, I just don't know what kind of personality we're going to get from this guy. Are they really going to be able to go through 3, 4, 5 losing seasons where you just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel? Is he capable of letting that happen? Meanwhile, they're building seats for people to be in the club at the daggone ball games as if this is some kind of a, you know, college party town. And I'm just like, again, I got to see it to believe it. I'm happy that we've at least bought in, you know, as a general populace of sports fans in DC to the notion that, yeah, it's going to be bad for a while. But I'm still angry about the fact that they didn't make this decision 3 seasons ago. You know what I mean? You cannot just sort of dismiss and say, okay, well, let's find out they're going to rebuild. First of all, you don't know if the rebuild is going to work. And second of all, that's a lot of time wasted for fans who literally invested time and energy in this squad and were sold a bill of goods that they never got.
So the 2-3 years ago thing, there's nothing to add to that. Like, it is just an impossibly bad decision. And by the way, it cost them God knows how much in assets in terms of trade value for Beal.
Right.
But here's what I will tell you. They are in the rebuild, and Theodore cannot look back now because this is a little nerdy, which I know this is your favorite when I get super CBA rules nerdy.
Here we go. Roster construction chalk talk.
They owe a future first to the Knicks. And because of the way the protections work, they don't know exactly when that is going to go. They cannot make a big deal. Like,
right.
let's say the Pelicans they send out a memo and they're like, hey, Zion's available. Or the Grizzlies are like, hey, Ja's available. Best package, go. The Wizards can't offer multiple firsts. They are locked into building through with what they have right now unless they can get make a trade with the Knicks and get their pick back, because they can't do some gigantic trade. So We're in it, man. There's no guarantee it's going to work, but we're in it.
I will say the one season most recently that I was a Wizards season ticket holder, they were garbage every night. I had no intention of watching the games. I would just go hang out at the arena, kick it with people. It'll be fun to be there. Trust me. It won't have anything to do with what's happening on the court. That is a fact.
It will be fun. And guess what? Jordan Poole is kind of fun to watch.
He's cool. I like him. He's a fun player. I think he's the kind of guy that, you know, I'm not going to say I feel bad for him in his career, but we all know what he went through in Golden State in terms of everything that happened. The guy is a winner, you know, and so at the very least, you'll get a personality that knows what he's looking at as a winner, as opposed to people that claim to be winners that have never really done it before. And I'm not throwing any names out there, but let's just say some of them are no longer in town.
Yeah. All right, Clinton Yates, read the work on the College World Series at ESPN.com. You got any? You weren't around the horn today, but next week back on the show.
Next week back, but I'm gonna go eat steak right now with my friend Ryan McGee.
Nice. By the way, Marty last night in San Antonio.
Don't get me started. Jorts and jersey and wacky haircut, commitment to the bit on a level that we call in the baseball scouting world elite.
Check. Talk to you next. Actually, I won't talk to you next week because I'm out. So I'll talk to you soon because you're my friend.
I agree. Talk to you later.
The radio. Okay, bye.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.